Hi, I'm Bekopin and you're watching Rappler. I'm particularly excited about today's Rappler Talk episode kasi it's seldom that I am asked to do homework and read or watch literature in this case beforehand. And honestly, I think more guests should be asking me to do that. So because today we will be talking about queer representation in media. This has been a really predominant discussion nowadays, diba? So I want you and us today to dig deeper into discussions of representation. What does it even mean? Why is it important? And what can we do to improve representation for queer people in Philippine media? So I have as my guests today Thais Estrada. She's a freelance writer and a trustee of Metro Manila Pride. Hello, Thais.
Hi guys, good day. Hello to all the viewers of today's Rappler episode. Bea, thank you so much for inviting me, for having me.
Thank you
And
for
I'm excited
taking
about
time.
today's topic.
And we have Rod Singh. Malamang kilala niyo siya as a director and of course, for directing Mamu and a Mother to which is streaming. Ni-remind na ako kanina. Nag-stream na siya ngayon, so panoorin niyo na siya. Thank you for joining us today.
Ayan. Hello, hello, hi. Thank you. Thank you then for inviting me sa ating discussion for today. Ayun.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Actually, yung nag-prompt kumbaga ng question na to sa akin kasi siguro naman all our viewers since you're online, you know na sobrang uso ngayon yung BL in Philippine media. Sunod-sunod yung series, yung movies, and along with that, di ba, syempre, yung discussion on representation. So, ano ba ang representation in the first place? Parang naging buzzword na siya minsan, di ba, online.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
Mauna ka direct. Go.
Hindi, kasi I think merong parang representation in theory, and then there's this representation that we actually demand. And I think it varies depende kung anong ano siya kung nasa ang kultura ka And as per me, dito sa Pilipinas, we have a different demand for representation and for me, I think yung hinihinging representation is not just, I mean, there's a thin line between visibility and representation, and I think what we aspire is actually to be represented, and by represented, we are humanized. I think what's really important for me right now when we say representation is puso talaga. I think within our queer characters, na-represent siya in the industry for the longest time. Visible siya, but I think what's missing is puso and yung treatment na ma-humanize yung mga characters na ito. Ayun.
Tama.
Yes, agree.
I completely agree. So, yun yung keywords ng representation actually. Tama si director sa thin line between just visibility and representation. Visibility is like the bare minimum. We want to see and observe, hear more and more queer LGBT individuals in our media, in our local media. But matagal nang ganun eh. Matagal lang may visibility kahit papaano, no? It's not, though hindi wide at first, of course, because alam naman natin yung stigma na meron kakabit ng isang queer character or LGBT character. But there are maraming instances in our media history na visible ang mga queer and LGBT characters. The thing is, tama naman si Direk, what is lacking is actual representation. What it means for me uh, is that kind of honest portrayals of what queer lives are. So for the longest time, it has not been honest for me. It's very eh, geared towards kung ano yung pwedeng gamitin sila as, like a comedic crutch. or
Right.
what else? Parang puro kalungkutan. Alam mo 'yun? It's like the life of a queer individual is mired in disaster. Parang ganon.
Right.
Parang
Right.
there are many more stories that should be represented, and you know yun yung kailangang lumabas at yun yung kailangang i-champion ng mas maraming creators. And touch ko lang, no, hindi lang siya limited sa kung anong lumalabas sa media, kung anong napapanood mo, pero kung
Mhm.
sino din yung gumagawa. So,
Okay.
ang laking importance, representation is also something that's, kung sino yung gumagawa nung media,
Material. Mm.
sinong nagdedesisyon kung paanong lalabas ang medyang to. At
Mhm.
yung complete and total support ng lahat para sa medyang to. So ganun yung klase ng representation ng nasa isip ko. It isn't just visibility, it isn't
Right.
just something that you can see, but also what's behind what you're actually seeing and consuming. So
Right.
yun yun.
Mhm.
So kumbaga kung visibility parang andyan ka pero parang hindi parang kumbaga hindi na namin like hindi namin uungkatin kung sino ka or kung anong klaseng tama ba yung pagkaintindi ko like it
Hmm.
just to distinctify siguro like people are wondering like ano bang pinagkaiba ng pag-represent sa pagiging visible, hindi na ba sapat na andyan ka or may queer character sa isang show or whatever.
Ako for me kasi parang yun nga, I think na-mention na rin ni Thais nga na we've been visible for the longest time sa media. I think sa paper ko noon, I remember that the first depiction of a gay character in Philippine film is in 1954 na
Right.
si Dolce pa yung gumanap noon sa Jack and Jill. And I think for the past 50 years, we've been visible. Pero yung question kasi lies doon sa ano ba yung representation kasi for me should be empowering, should be parang hindi siya dangerous doon sa community na nare-represent niya. So when we say representation, you just don't represent one character, but you represent a community na nire-represent niya. So ako, I always think of representation as something of like a responsibility for the
Right.
community na nire-represent niya. So I think yun talaga yung difference niya na parang nakikita namin kayo, visible kayo, pero ang question is naririnig niyo ba kami? Yun yung kailangan for me, yun yung difference.
Right. That's
It
a good
is.
parang keyword. Kumbaga, hearing, like listening and hearing
Mhm.
the
Yes.
sector or the group of people that's being portrayed. Size, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, very quickly lang, it's the main danger na sinasabi ni
Mm,
Direk, no, na dun sa sinabi niya earlier, the visibility kasi limits itself to tropes, no?
yeah.
So may maingay na bakla trope, alam mo
Mm,
yon, may tomboy na siga trope, um may effeminate character na hindi mo man lang alam kung actually trans ba siya, or uh was this person just cross-dressing,
right.
or meron yung point na, when there's a cross-dressing character, the point of this cross-dressing character is to deceive, and dapat lang siyang kamuhian kasi and abusuhin physically. May maraming physical comedies na ganun na dahil yung character is cross-dressing to try to, I mean, to deceive or to
Yeah.
get away with something. These are the tropes na which are dangerous, and ito yung sinasabi ni Direk na it doesn't serve the community at all, no.
Right.
This is not representation, this is just merely visibility. There's a gay character, lesbian character, bisexual, transgender on the screen, and that's it.
Right.
Ginagamit siya. So pero walang pagpapaintindi kung ano mismo siya.
Right.
So na-stuck tayo dun for a long time. And what we're
Yeah.
trying to do with the things that we're, trying to do in the back end, or with like direct as a creator is to reclaim that, no?
Right.
uh Now's a good time and a, time in history na maybe we can reclaim that and really put forward what representation means for the entire community.
Right. So, nabanggit ko nga kanina because now that we're discussing tropes, so nabanggit ko kanina yung assignment ni Fai sa akin when I first approached her, invited her for this interview. So, bago yun, first time yun, honestly, na may nag-offer sa akin, like, someone actually suggested related literature, diba, to prepare me better, and I thank you for that. I thoroughly, like, it was a super good walk. I don't want to use the word good kasi hindi talaga siya, medyo depressing siya after, like, once you absorb everything. So, okay, if you haven't watched Disclosure, it's on Netflix. Just watch it after this interview. Listen to us first. But, so, yung basically kasi diba, the documentary, like, walks you through the history of how trans people are portrayed in American media, in fiction, and yeah, in fiction mostly. What's the situation in the Philippines?
Oh wow.
Ano ba? Sige. I think
Gusto ko yung long pause at long sigh bago mo sagutin yung tanong.
hindi kasi parang for me I think yung motivation ko talaga is of writing trans narratives and actually representing trans narratives. It's because I felt like trans people ay naging device ng napakaraming content creators dito under the shadows of like representation. But in reality, they're actually exploiting the idea of like, and I quote, sinasabi nila na parang it's ano yun, a woman trapped in a man's body. So parang
Mhm.
when I actually made Mamu, that's my motivation kasi it 'di ba parang when we talk about trans women we always talk about how they become a woman 'di ba and it's actually the physical transition 'di ba yung idea na nagkakaroon sila ng suso and then they have gender affirming surgeries ganyan pero we don't talk about social transitioning, we don't talk about their journey of being a woman, we don't talk about them being mothers, diba? And then for me, it's very important that for us to humanize these characters, kailangan nating ma-explore yung paano ba sila as humans, as paano ba sila as kapatid, as anak, as nanay, as a character that interacts with other characters and not just assigned male at birth but identifies as female, no? And I think siguro yun din parang if in history there has been a lot of trans feminine characters na visible naman but hindi talaga na explore yung kung paano sila kumbaga yung ideal natin of representation wherein they get to play wherein trans actors get to play trans roles ay paano ba I'm not sure if I made it first but there is a film prior to Mamu na about it's entitled Quick Change and I
Yes.
remember feeling bad about the whole thing because number one Cinemalaya failed to recognize the actress as a woman. She's been nominated for the best actor and actually won the
Nanalo
category.
siya.
Nanalo siya but at best actor. And siguro at that time it's controversial. But what looking back, what I realized is that andun pa rin yung lente sa paano ine-exploit yung trans bodies, paano ine-exploit yung idea of them transitioning. So it somehow parang doon pa rin siya umikot. I think with all the trans narrative, not just in mainstream but in indie or the visibility of trans women in general. They're confined doon sa misery of undergoing surgeries, andun sila sa miserableng trope ng pagiging sex worker. And I think yun yung naging motivation ko of like reclaiming these narratives
Mm-hmm.
Kasi, ang problema ng mga tao, I think yun din ang na-observe ko, not just with, cis people, but also by, sa queer community, is that they resist stereotype. And stand ko siya ever since na there's nothing wrong with stereotype. Kasi,
Mm-hmm.
stereotype ay hindi kinreate ng creators. They actually get it from actual LGBT people. And then ginawa nilang trope. And when you feel bad about stereotype, parang naano ka sa stereotype, parang nagkakaroon tuloy ng impression na negative yung mga totoong tao na ganito
That's
kumilos.
right.
No? So,
Okay.
ang sinasabi ko is, it's not the stereotype na wrong. Hindi siya yung characterization. What is wrong is that nalimitahan yung journey ng mga taong to. Hindi sila nabibigyan ng puso, hindi sila nabibigyan ng kwento outside this stereotypical characterization. But hindi dapat yung galit ay nanggagaling doon sa dahil kinulong nyo kami dito, hindi dahil sa bakit puro kami ganyan. Kasi I feel bad kasi I think I fall under this stereotypical gay character, maingay, humorous and all that. And parang nagkaroon ng factions within the community in a sense na parang nagkakaroon ng parang hindi ko masabi pero parang nagre-resist sila doon sa idea na ito yung naging muka ng kabaklaan, the pa-girl ones, the yung mga may ingay, yung mga flamboyant. And I feel bad, I think, na yun yung naging impression nila. So, ayun.
Ang ganda.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, Bea, sumabog yung utak ko dun. Kasi for a long time, about the stereotype thing, Direct, thank you so much. That was amazing. Kasi I've always asked, we're good friends. The Direct Rod and I are good friends. But never kong natanong sa kanya bakit yung si Mamu is still in the world of being a sex worker, that she's in a poor community, but ganun pa rin yung storya niya, which is, alam naman natin na ganun umiikot yung storya ng maraming trans movies or media na nakukonsume natin before Mamo went, came out. So, it makes so much sense. Tama si Direk. It's a better point for reclamation kung ang tinitira mo is yung hindi yung mismo stereotype, no? So, nandun na siya sa stereotype, binigay ito sa kanila kasi lagi siyang nakikita. Pero, i-extend mo yung narrative na, sige, ganun nga siya. Sex worker siya, maingay siyang bakla, or transgender, mahirap siya, pero napakaramit makulay yung buhay niya, buong buo, no? Hindi siya nalimitahan doon ng story ang ginawa ni Direk. So, this was eye-opening for me. Kasi na-mention ni Direk yung about kay Quick Change, which was in Cinemalaya a few years back. I think 2014?
13 ata. 13?
2013, yeah. 2013. During that time, if you can remember, Bea, yun yung medyo height, hindi pa naman height, pero parang dun nag-start yung tinatawag nilang transgender tipping point, no? So the US had a huge parang upheaval in terms of how they are presented in media with transgender narratives and stories. Nagkaroon ng Transparent, nagkaroon ng Orange is the New Black, and nagkaroon ng there was a show called Billions which had a transgender character na part ng main cast. So, yun yung medyo naalog yung mundo ng US media, no, na biglang sabay-sabay napakaraming transgender characters, as well as in local, I mean in like in literature, there Janet Mock came out as transgender sa kanyang book. She's a very, popular actress na already, but disclosed for the first time that she's transgender. So parang during that year, or parang nung nagkaroon nga ng transgender tipping point, si ano pa, asawa ni Kardashian,
Caitlyn.
Yes.
Caitlyn Jenner. Yes, yes. Around that time, yeah, also.
That's
Imagine how
right.
huge that was. So,
Yeah.
nagkaroon ng sunod-sunod na parang transgender stories na nasa kamalayan ng US media, no? Siyempre, pag bumahing ang US, nagkakasipon ang Pilipinas. So, 'di ba? So nangyari din sa atin. So around that time, nagkaroon din ng maraming discussion over transgender narratives. And then yun nga, there was a story that came out. It's called Quick Change. But the thing is, and what the disclosure as a movie, Bea,
Yeah.
when you said, I mean, ang tinitiran nila nung time na yun is hindi siya it just scratched the surface.
Right.
Mm.
Um, it konting-konti lang ng mga kwentong transgender ang lumalabas, and most of the time it's the privileged voices.
Right.
And yun yung grupo ni na Janet Mock, Laverne Cox,
Yeah.
Jen Richards, na sabi nila, ibalik natin yung usapan sa atin, 'di ba? Hindi dapat na ginawa lang siya ng somebody who wants to look at our story from the outside and interpret it as, how they thought it was. Tama nga si Derek Rod na nalilimitahan pag hindi ka genderqueer creator or LGBT creator at the most basic. Yung story ang sinusulat mo kasi hindi mo na alam eh. You're just looking at the story and trying to interpret it as your own. So wala siyang yung representation na hinahanap, hindi siya conversation. It's just you writing the story of some person you have an idea about, but not really kung ano yung bigat nun in terms of kung sa kung anong community siya belong. So yung the whole like journey from since that explosion in 6 years ago,
Mm.
2014, 2013, 6, 7 years ago, until now, actually nag leaps and bounds na yung tinalon, no? Kasi marami ng, mas marami ng taong nakakaintindi at mas marami ng taong, like, nasa word on the street na ang soji, gender
Yeah.
identity, and, you know, so hindi ko alam kung what else uh, could happen in the future, but definitely a lot more are empowered to take the
Mm.
stories and reclaim these stories, towards the forefront. And a lot more people are allowing it to happen.
Right.
So, parang yun yung from then to now na expectation natin. So, yeah, that's it.
Right. I really like kanina yung basically so like taking these stereotypes na people are so angry towards. Understandably. It's understandable din
Mm.
kung bakit sila galit. But like you flipped it and said no, but I mean it's not in itself a negative.
Mm. Mm.
But it's only a negative because society has been telling us na hanggang bad lang yan. Parang ganun.
Actually, ang nagre-retaliate about or nagre-resist about the idea of stereotype is actually the intellectuals and intellectual queer people in general. Kasi I use the stereotype device, the stereotype na to as a character device to actually speak the language of the masa. No, I want Mamu to appeal to those people na saturate na sa idea na may bakla, may tomboy, may trans, pero hindi lumalim yung understanding nila doon. So the idea for me is to use this yung pagiging relatable ng character for them kasi it's their language. Sanay sila sa ganyang language ng mga bakla sa pelikula. And ang ginawa ko is to actually introduce beyond that. So parang naka-access sila agad doon sa pelikula because familiar yung character ni Mamu. Pero mas lumalim yung understanding nila kasi mas nakilala nila ngayon yung character na familiar sila. And I think yun yung ginagawa ko hanggang ngayon na device na I want to, when I say reclaim these narratives, I'm actually referring to, etong mga kwentong alam nila ng mga taong hindi nakakakilala sa atin, hindi nakakaunawa or nakakaalam ng mga kwento natin. Kasi sila yung dapat na tina-target, I think. Kasi
Right.
parang for me, when I made Mamu, malinaw sa akin na I'm not gonna make this film for people na alam na kung ano yung kwento natin, you know. Ay ang lengguwahe na gusto kong ipakita dito ay yung mga taong hindi pa kilala or hindi pa nauunawaan kung ano yung kwento na meron kami, 'di ba? So parang ginamit ko yung device, yung kwento ni Mamu, kaya ganun yung treatment niya para eventually, of course, mas mabasag na nila yung idea nila ng, you
Right.
know, na ganito sila, ganyan sila, ganun.
Right. Start with the familiar. To
Oo.
kasi kung oo nga, parang parang malalesen din yung impact if you're just preaching to the choir, kumbaga. Na gets na
True.
nila yun eh. Bakit? Yeah. Okay. Wait, sumabog din yung utak ko, nawala yung
Actually,
train of
kaya parang sa buong pelikula, I never mentioned about trans. You
Right.
know, I actually referred to them as women. Their
Right.
pronouns is she. Their identity is she. Babae ako. May ganun silang assertion. Because that is the easiest way to explain what trans women is to, you know, for people na hindi tayo nauunawaan. Yun lang yun. Ang trans woman ay isang babae. So, I made them women in my universe. And siguro, ako, mas na-feel bad ako with the reaction of the intellectual queers kasi they have this assumption that it's fairy tale. But I think they just need to immerse themselves sa kwento ng mga baklang laylayan kasi etong mga kwentong to ay may pinagbasihan ako. Yung mga characterization na to ay may pinagbasihan ako. Even the 7 years relationship of Mamu and Vincent, you know. Because for all they know, ang alam nila ang laki-laki pa ng problema natin, ang dilim-dilim pa ng mundo natin. But, you know, yung mga tao sa probinsya, yung mga taong tao dito tulad nila Mamu, they're actually living in a sort of a bubble na ito na yung pagkilala sa kanila. And this is what I want people to see because I want them to believe. Kasi paano ba tayo mananalo kung hindi naman tayo naniniwala, 'di ba? So I think mahalaga na maniwala muna yung mga tao na nangyayari to for us to make it happen, right? So ako yun yung for me talaga yung motivation behind, you know, stereotypes and film language nung pelikula.
Right. Okay, I want to talk about the power also of when genderqueer people create content about and for. I don't know if interchangeable ba yun, yung about and for other genderqueer people. Like, okay, kasi that's also a discussion now, or rather a debate on social media, di ba? Na parang, because again, like, to shorten, like BL isn't created for queer people. It's the original target market, at least in Thailand, is women. Funnily enough, right? So parang where do you even begin? Like, bakit nga ba, okay, back to basics again, like, bakit nga ba important that it's not just, like, the story isn't just about genderqueer characters? Why is it important na yung people behind it are also, you know, or is it important ba? Is that a false narrative in my head na it's important?
It is
Ano
important.
ba?
Ako, for me, importante. Okay, we're not, okay, ito kasi yan. So maraming, when you say kasi na we wanna create, absolutely anyone can create.
Right.
And everyone can start from a jump off point na, okay, I want to create a character, I want to write a story completely different from me. Okay, it's all right because you're a creator and you can really literally flesh out these stories. But it varies with the degree of success.
Okay.
No, for the most part, at napakaraming, you know, paulit-ulit na nangyayari in the history of literature or creation, sabihin na natin, na pag hindi informed yung gumagawa, hindi malaking effect kasi hindi naging hindi tama, at malaki yung danger pag completely wrong yung nilabas niya dahil ang basihan lang niya is something na nakita niya, hindi lived experience, no? And a huge part of what gender identity is, sexual identity, is lived experiences.
Mhm.
So, what I mean, there's no shortage of LGBT creators.
For
And
sure.
it's just a matter of, asking them to create these stories and put these stories out. If you really want to support and put out a story that's true and based on lived experiences, um, kasi malamang sa malamang kung hindi LGBT ang creator or genderqueer, may sabit yung storya for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
May and yun nga, varying degrees of success or failure. May sabit yung magiging storya mo. And dangerous siya noon, dangerous siya ngayon. Of course, naging mas improved na kasi mas marami nang may alam, no? At napapag-aralan na siya at meron ng basis. Pero um I wanna still go back to, that ability and opportunity na dapat binibigay sa mga taong may talento naman
Yeah.
na gumawa ng ganito. So the talent's there. The story is something that they should be telling anyway because sa kanila nang galing yung storya. Um, so why not, 'di ba?
Right.
Pagawa sa kanila yung ano, and that's the reason why it's important. Actually, creation pa lang yung pinag-uusapan natin, Bea, no? But I'm sure you're gonna delve on actual later, like parang kung like will should trans people actually act as
Yeah.
the trans characters on visual media.
Mhm.
So, but right now, for your question about creators,
Yeah.
yes, it is important uh, because it's allowing them to tell the stories themselves. Also, to diversify the landscape of creators.
Mhm.
Not all the time that genderqueer voices are represented and paid paid
Mm-mm.
for what they do as creators.
Yeah.
So give them that chance. Yun lang naman yung sa akin. I'm sure Direct has
Mm.
more to say as a creator talaga. I mean, of visual media.
Yes, direct. Go ahead.
Ako, I think, yeah, important. I agree with Thais na important na queer creators get to tell their story. But, kailangan pa rin na nasa tamang direksyon talaga yung paglikha. Um, may mga ano kasi, parang hindi basta parang free pass na dahil LGBT ka or queer ka, you get to tell and represent the community.
Yes.
Kasi you have to realize that para siyang domino effect na parang isang pagkakataon na magkwento ka or ma-misrepresent mo yung community. 'di ba? Malalagay sa alanganin yung kung ano man yung gusto nating tahakin. Kasi, I watched so many films. Sorry, bigyan ako ng dighay na acid ako. Anyway, napakaraming pelikula ang nilikha ng mga queer people naman. But, politically, it's not strong enough or worse pa nga ay wrong for me kasi or dangerous
Yeah.
kasi siguro yung confidence nila na okay, bakla naman ako, kaya ko tong ikwento, but when you actually create a story, you just don't see it as a bakla, your characters as intersecting struggles. Ano ba yung gusto mong makita ng mga tao, kasi parang for example a film about a queer character na ang gusto lang naman niya sa buhay ay magka-jowa, 'di ba? Or makapangasawa is not that strong enough to be a device for us to say that we deserve our rights. Kasi may tendency na kasi ito yung mga gusto nating i-break 'di ba? When the marriage equality debate starts, sasabihin nila na gusto niyo lang namang magpakasal and all that Ito yung pinaglalaban lang naman nila, gusto lang naman nila mag-asawa and magjowa. But we tend to miss the other struggles or issues na kinakaharap ng community. And I think nasa tamang pagtitimpla yun if you understand your characters well eh. So, yung issue sa pera, issue sa access to education, to healthcare, and everything. Ito yung mga kailangan mong i-consider when you create a character. But of course, it's also unfair naman for the audience. It's also unfair for the creators naman. Kapag mag-demand yung audience ng representation ng halos lahat ng klase ng tao in one content. Because that's not gonna happen. BL, hanapan nila ng BL ng trans narrative. Pero, 'di ba, parang gusto ko sabihin minsan na parang, you know what? We have actually trans narratives here, and I don't understand why we're actually trying to put ourselves into the BL narrative. Well, in fact, we can actually create our own.
Right.
'Di ba? Parang hindi natin kailangang i-reclaim yung BL in the first place because we have a wonderful Pinoy queer cinema. Right? So parang ako, yun yung parang problema rin. Parang ako, pag hinanapan ako sa mga kwento ko ng asa na ang mga storya ng mga paminta, ng mga mass for mass, sabihin ko sa kanila na meron kayong library. Meron tayong library ng mga pamin-pamin narrative. So, you can actually check it out. Yeah, you can actually check it out. Diba? So parang, yun yung sinasabi ko na parang tinanong ako before if I'm seeing myself making a lesbian film. Sinabi ko sa kanya ni, you know what, we have family for that narrative. And I'm not comfortable enough to actually make a lesbian film because their experiences are different. And I don't think I will represent them well. Right. Hindi gate pass or parang free pass sa akin na nasa advocacy ako, that I know so much about representation or the queer narrative. I think napakahalaga nung unique voice na kino-contribute ng isang taong naranasan yung karanasan ng mga characters niya. So hindi enough talaga basta na I'm queer, but you're privileged, parang so paano mo i-resolve or i-present yung characters na to. So yeah, I think doon nagkakamali eh kasi yung mga gumawa rin naman ng trans narratives before actually cis gay men.
Yeah.
So yun yung naging problema because their assumption is that trans women are like bakla na babae lang magdamit.
Yeah.
So yun yung nagiging problema, yun yung hindi nila na napapansin, 'di ba? Yun yung hindi nila naiintindihan. So for me, both audience and creators have the responsibility to actually assess, 'di ba? Kung nasaan tayo ngayon, kung ano yung dapat ikwento at kung ano lang yung kaya niyang ikwento. Kasi I understand the sentiments din of some queer creators na parang nasa kanila yung pressure to tell these kinds of stories, ganyan. Parang ako naman, for me, parang unfair siya to both sides na parang madami tayong queer creators, pwede tayong mag-spread and tell our own stories. So, there.
I like what you both said na kumbaga creating more space for even more people to come in and kumbaga ikwento din yung mga perspective. Oo nga. Feeling ko nga yun din yung pagkakamali naming straights na parang kumbaga parang nilalagay yung buong parang okay, LGBT ka, lahat ng LGBT narratives kaya mo, oo nga no. I think that tends to happen a lot in the film. I don't know, maybe abroad as well, but parang, okay, kaya mo na lahat ikwento just because you're LGBT. All LGBT experiences are within your purview.
True.
Syempre, that also touches on, like, I think Thais mentioned kanina, economic opportunity as well for queer creators, LGBTQ plus creators to have space. Not just for storytelling, but economic opportunity. Okay, I want to dive into the actors because I remember... Yes.
May dadagdag ako about the space, of creators of narratives. What the problem is right now is we have a very limited space for this narrative. So when the BL thing is, happened here, my first worry is that mawawalan ng opportunities yung other narratives. Kasi they will realize, producers in general will realize that, yung small space na to for queer narratives right now
Oh,
can
that's
actually be occupied by BL thing kasi it's profitable, it sells.
nga.
So that's my first worry about the whole thing, how mahirap lumangoy sa I have my narratives here, I have my trans narratives here. Mahirap lumangoy in a fact na parang in a situation right now, we currently have at least 24, 25 Pinoy BL.
So many.
So, 'di ba? Parang kung i-compare mo before BL happened, ilan
Yeah.
lang ba ang nare-release na queer content in a year?
Tama.
'Di ba? Ilan ba doon yung actually trans narrative? Ilan ba doon ang actually gay narrative, lesbian narrative? So, yun yung aking nakita na dangers nung Pinoy BL. So parang right now, ang challenge for me and for other creators is to find balance. Kailangan mabalanse natin. Kasi in Thailand, they actually managed to have BL and actual representation at the same time. Kasi, nakikita, balance sila eh. Parang, okay, may BL for those who are looking for BL, but at the same time, they're actually contents for trans people, for gay people, for lesbian people. Kasi, yun yung industry na meron sila. But right now, sa Pilipinas, yun yung nagiging problema natin. Na parang, sobrang swerte na makakita ka ng producer who will actually produce a trans narrative. Na parang nabibigyan ka ng creative freedom na in this time of puro BL.
Yeah.
Sinong magpo-produce ng trans, diba?
Why is that the situation now? Like, okay, is it economic considerations? Bakit nga ba ang hirap? 'Di ba? We have all these talented trans creators in the Philippines. Why is it so hard? Or bakit ang few and far apart ng, content that caters to and for the transgender person?
Ako siguro na-chika ko na to sa Twitter and that's always been my sentiment.
Yeah.
Makakakita ka ng mga taong magdedemand ng actual representation ng stories na ganito. Pero if sasabihin mo sa kanila na parang malalaman mo hindi nila napanood yung ganitong pelikula. Ang problema is that tinutulugan nila yung mga content that actually try to represent and to empower the community. Tinutulugan nila, hindi nila pinapanood sa sine. And yun yung problema, kasi pag mag-pitch ka, tatanungin ka, paano magre-return yung investment ng pelikula? Kasi, business, show business, it's called show business for a reason, di ba? Hindi naman siya, hindi, ang hirap nung advocacy lang eh. Kailangan may i-return ka in exchange of that opportunity to tell the story. So, ang problema is that, kailan ba may huling kumita na actual, narrative na nag-represent sa community? It was Die Beautiful. But, we have to think that Die Beautiful earned, I think, because it was MMFF.
Yes.
But if it was, if it suffered the same fate as Born Beautiful, na release na non-festival, I don't think that Die Beautiful really happened or achieved this So parang yun yung sinasabi kong important na parang, or nakaka-frustrate minsan that yung sumuporta sa Die Beautiful are actually the masa, diba? And where are the queer people by then? Where's the community? So parang napakahalaga, I think, ng suporta ng queer community. And I think, for me personally, I think the pink market in cinema is an illusion.
Okay.
It's an illusion. Never pa siyang nag-translate. I mean, tell me. Kailan ko nag-translate sa sales? Unless siguro mag-produce ka ng 1 million na pelikula, pero you don't expect a quality for a 1 million peso worth film. Right? Pero kung nag-expect tayo ng post levels, ng treatment, that kind of production value, shit, lugi.
Kasi it's what okay, isa din yung gender danger no kasi what they've come to expect from local productions is level ng kung ano nakikita nila abroad, which is Pose, which is Orange is the New Black, what else, RuPaul's Drag Race.
Pero,
so 'di ba, so parang then we won't get to that level kung hindi natin nasusustain muna kung anong kailangan natin unang i-sustain. So, unang-una, maging
Mm.
profitable muna ang isang LGBT-themed or, story
Yeah.
na ilalabas sa media. And then, yung totoong suporta na sunod-sunod, yung sinasabi nga ni Direct na, pink money, why does it seem like it's a myth? For some industries, it's actually real, but in cinema, for some reason, it doesn't immediately translate. It has
Mm.
um, the thing gets hyped up and naging profitable ang isang gay themed or LGBT themed movie. Yung example nga is Die Beautiful, is pag nagiging hyped up na siya kasama ng masa.
Masa.
Diba?
True.
So paano ba natin iisipin ngayon? Should we be as creators parang i-inline natin sa kung
Yeah.
anong kikita sa masa para kumita ang mas maraming ganitong pelikula? That's the reason why Die Beautiful is a comedy. That's the reason why it
True.
still goes around the same tropes of
Yeah.
LGBT. I mean, merong glimpses, merong paunti-unti na ini-insert syempre ng creator, but still the service is towards a bigger understanding para mas palatable siya sa mas maraming tao na hindi man necessarily gay or LGBT. So yun. So parang paano ba natin siya magiging mas effective? And it's still a question of economics. It's a business. If you tell me na you're supporting and if parang you're asking for more LGBT content or genderqueer content, then freaking pay for it.
Open your wallet.
Diba? Open your
True.
wallet.
Yeah.
Come on. And then sometimes when and it's not even that, like if there's a producer, yun ang sabi ni Direct na swerte na pag may producer na will allow trans narratives to become actual films or visual media. Bakit hindi mas maraming ganun? Hindi mas maraming nagcha-champion ng ganung mga storya? Because they don't see it yet as profitable. But
Right.
but what yun nga, anong klaseng phenomenon makes it profitable? It doesn't just mean na kailangan ng suporta ng gay at LGBT community, no? Unang-una na yung suporta nila, pero ang kasunod niyan is makuha natin yung suporta ng karamihan, ng the rest. So ibig sabihin ang laki ng burden. Actually, as in, it's a cycle, no? Na pag mas napapaintindi mo yung tao sa buhay ng LGBT, mas mapapanood siya ng kahit hindi LGBT. Alam mo yun? So, parang mas katanggap-tanggap yung storya ng LGBT, mas okay siyang panoorin ng mas maraming tao. Kung may stigma pa rin, hindi kikita yung kung ano mang LGBT creative endeavor mo. 'Di ba? So, dapat pinaglalaban yung opportunity na nakikita natin yung LGBT stories, magbago yung isip ng mga taong may stigma at opposed sa pagiging LGBT, magkaroon tayo ng mas maraming allies so that these allies are the ones who are gonna help us make LGBT stories, visual media, profitable.
Right.
Diba? Tao silang magko-consume ng media natin and willing to consume kasi hindi na sila iwas dun sa idea na may nakikita silang bakla on screen or transgender on screen. Diba? Beyond comedy, beyond katatawanan, beyond yun nga, the usual tropes, no? Tanggap nila yung storya. Ayun.
Right. Okay, this might be another long discussion, but like a few days ago, may nakita nga akong tweet by a young actor who I think he was genuinely curious kasi parang
Si Van?
yes, kasi parang
Tinanong nila ako doon.
I think he was I don't want to presume, but I think he was genuinely curious lang. Parang does that mean that should straight actors or should cisgender actors avoid LGBT roles? What should they do? How should they operate in that sphere? Like if it's offered to them, should they actively say na no, ayoko niyan kasi hindi naman ako yan, or how should actors navigate that? especially nga ngayon, ang surge in BL and hopefully other identities. But anong ideal?
Ako siguro I'll speak as, as an advocate and as a creator as well. The ideal is always queer actors portraying queer roles, no?
Yes.
But while we actually, struggle to carve our space in the industry for so many narratives, for our ideals to happen, I think naman our straight allies are welcome to play these roles. Kasi ang belief ko is that kailangan magpatuloy ang pagkukwento.
Okay.
Kailangan magpatuloy yung storytelling dahil kailangan hindi tayo mawala doon sa ano natin, sa visibility, hindi tayo mawala doon sa consciousness ng mga taong kailangan makarinig ng kwento natin. Kasi kung ipipilit natin kumbaga parang ipipilit natin yung hindi kailangan queer actor, wala silang makas kasi nga andun sila sa idea na it has to be profitable. So yun yung sinasabi ko kanina. Na kailangan muna natin, kapag meron, i-watch natin kasi wala din ako, kahit ako wala akong masayit. Totoo lang. Ako, swerte ako na Mamu ay Cinema One Originals Festival. Kasi hindi ka tatanungin about, commercial something.
Right.
Diba? Parang ganon. Because it's festival, talagang content is king. Ganyan ang pagdala. So, pero sa producer's aspect, paano? Pero in fairness naman, we are getting there. Ipaglaban mo, for example, they're actually casting trans. They're actually trying a little bit, pero ilan lang ba ang trans actors natin so far? So, syempre, hindi sila magka-cast ng totally who you, diba? Parang alam mo naman how the media works here in the Philippines. So, unti pa rin. Meron pa rin limited space. You can only name 2 or 3 trans actors are actually acting, 'di ba? Parang sinabi ko nga kay Ian noon when she won the best actress na magiging default go-to ka ng producers pag sinabing kailangan ng trans. Kasi someone actually did it. Someone actually made it happen. So kailangan lang talaga nating mag-open ng opportunities for these actors kasi eventually the studios will follow.
Right.
Parang, sige, kayo muna gumawa. Ayaw namin mag-risk O sige, mag-risk ako. Hindi naman to So you see, sobrang komplikado nung na parang, alam mo sa totoo lang, dapat nga welcome development na they're actually straight actors playing gay roles. Ako, I realize lang before parang, dali lang yan, pera, something. Kasi hindi, mag-reject ka, I swear. Merong mag-reject sa'yo for you know what, alam mo na yun. Na bakit? Bakit nila ayaw, di ba? So parang, I think, pwede, we dapat tayong mag-welcome ng ating allies. Pero alam dapat natin na dapat temporary lang ito. Hindi tayo magse-settle dito. Kasi kung magse-settle na tayo dyan, hindi na mag-open yung industry for other opportunities. So dapat talaga may balance, gradual, kumbaga. O sige, ako, ang ginagawa ko right now is I combine a straight actor with a gay actor. Compromise tayo. Sige, 50-50 tayo. Sa'yo yung lalaki, sa akin yung Bex. Ganyan, di ba?
So parang baby steps na lang. Baby steps lang.
Oo, baby steps. Andun tayo. Pero at least, di ba, swerte na ako doon. Totoo lang. Swerte na ako kung gay actor yung isa. So far, hindi ko masabi. Pero kung straight actor to straight actor and I have a good story to tell, sige. Di ba? Pero, ang unang-una kong sinasabi sa actor, politika ng pelikula ko. So sinasabi ko na sa kanya that when you accept this role, you're actually, representing the politics of this film. Hindi pwedeng magkaiba tayo. So kung hindi mo gusto, you can say no. Hindi pwedeng tatanggapin mo lang because trabaho and then you're not agreeing with my film. You have to agree with my film and you have to stand by it. Yun na lang yung nakikita kong way. And maganda dito, nagiging vocal din yung mga actors in terms of issues like LGBT kasi yun yung part ng motivation mo as a director Ikukwento mo sa kanila sa nanggagaya mga character, ganyan. So parang, okay, sige. Ako, particular lang ako while this is just pahiram, particular ako na I will cast a straight actor to play a gay role as long as masculine gay man siya. hindi ko siya gagawing FM or hindi ko siya gagawing trans.
Mm,
Yun
Mhm.
yung akin. So, kung ano siya, masculine, at kung cis man, na it just happens na attracted sa gay man, so be it. Diba?
right.
Pwede yan. Pero yung kailangan niyang magpa-girl, mag-feminize, and all that,
Mm,
iffy ako personally kasi I grew up na ito yung mga klase ng insults na natatanggap ko eh. You
yes.
know, people
Yes.
are like actually trying to copy what your gender expression, your action.
Yes.
So, iffy ako with straight actors playing trans roles or feminine roles. Sige, kaya sa BL okay ako. Kasi pasok naman eh. I mean,
Yeah.
yung characterization nila eh masculine eh. So
Right.
go, 'di ba? Parang I think yun yung BL fantasy eh. So okay lang, 'di
Right.
ba? Pero yeah, I think yun yung babalik at babalik tayo doon na dapat aware tayo na pahiram lang 'to.
Yeah.
And dapat may continuous efforts tayo na mag-introduce ng gay actor.
Right.
So para eventually makuha na natin yung space na yon na hindi na natin kailangang kumuha pa ng straight actor. So
Mm.
matagal-tagal pa to.
Long
Tama.
game.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
long game. Tama. I just want to add because here's kung if you watch Disclosure again, we want everyone to watch Disclosure if you can. Pero it was touched, no? Bakit nga ba walang or like there's a dearth of gay, lesbian, transgender actors or genderqueer actors who are supposedly, able to take on roles ng mga LGBTQIA stories or visual media. So, bakit? Kasi hindi nakakast kasi either walang opportunities para sa kanila or hindi pasok dun sa character. But it's a long game. Sinasabi nga kung walang availability, edi gumawa, 'di ba? So dapat mas may nang i-encourage na mga transgender, LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual actors or would-be actors na turuang umarte,
Yeah.
mag-workshop, mag ma-expose sa filmmaking. Kasi oportunidad din to ng how do you make doctors? How do you make generals?
Right.
How do you make
Right.
lawyers? You teach them first, 'di
Right.
ba?
Right.
And picky or parang start the interest start that kind of fire in somebody who wants to be one, 'di ba? Wants to be an actor who happens to be transgender, 'di ba?
Right.
So yun yung unang parang solusyon. Kung gusto mo ng mas maraming taong mapilian para dun sa mga role,
Open the
mag-invest tayo. Yeah,
opportunities.
mag-invest tayo sa edukasyon nila na maturuan sila kung paano mas magaling umarte at lumibel sa mga straight actors and actresses.
Right.
And the second thing, how and why is it important, no? Tinouch na ni Direk yung actual characterization and why number one, it's important na yung nag-embody sa kanya is yung mismong gay, lesbian, or bisexual, but it's actually different to transgender with transgenders because sa movie sa Disclosure, no, tinouch yung dangers ng if you're casting non-trans actors in trans roles. The danger is actually lethal.
Right. Right.
Maaaring ito ay rason kung bakit na murder ang mga
Mm.
transgender individuals. Why? So this was put brilliantly by Dr. Jen Richards, yung nag-explain nitong phenomenon na to, no? So, i-share ko lang very quickly, and as far as I understood it, that when trans women characters on screen are portrayed by non-trans individuals, this is something that these actors can shed
Right.
after the role is done. So if I was like isipin natin somebody a straight actor masculine, no? As in talagang yung for
Mm-mm.
example, yung example ni sa Danish Girl,
Yes. Si Eddie
who's
Redmayne.
named, yeah, Eddie Redmayne. Yeah, Eddie
Yes.
Redmayne is a straight guy
Yeah.
who played one of the first transgender women in history, si Lily.
Right.
So once Eddie Redmayne became a celebrated actor for that role,
Mm-hmm.
inhabiting a female. Medyo rurok yan sa kahit na anong actor eh.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to get that, um, nuance ng pagportray ng isang transgender woman. Naging celebrated siya. But what
Yeah.
people see in the movie is Eddie Redmayne's character is a female, a transgender woman, but what he is,
Is
pag
a man.
nasa award show siya, pag
Right.
nasa talk show siya talking about the movie, is he's a cis man.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
Right.
it looks as if it's something that you can shed. It looks as
Right.
if something that you can remove and
Right.
set aside and cast away and be celebrated for it as an act.
Yeah.
So, yun yung danger kasi ang expectation ng isang manunood na yun yung nakita niya sa film tapos pag sinearch niya kung sino si Eddie Redmayne na nagportray ng role na yun ay lalaki, I mean cisgender man pala. So, magkakaroon siya ng wrong impressions of what transgender women is compared to kung trans woman ang gumanap sa role ni Lily. So, kung nakahanap sila ng transgender actress to play the role of Lily in The Danish Girl, hindi magkakaiba kung ano yung itsura niya sa pelikula at kung ano yung lived experience ni Lily doon at sa tunay na buhay.
Right.
So, nagko-continue yung trans narrative, protected yung idea ng pagiging trans kasi yun yung makikita niya outside of the movie, no? So, and nagiging lethal siya in a way kasi nga sinasabi, meron tayong and very recent memory, meron tayong tinatawag na transpanic defense
Mm-hmm.
para sa
Mm-hmm.
mga lalaki na or well kahit sino man to be honest, but there's what we call a transpanic defense na yun yung nangyari kay Jen Laude
Yeah.
na when she was murdered because Pemberton, her murderer, panicked at the sight of her being discovering that she is actually transgender. So when this happens, kung ang expectation ng isang uh, lalaki or kung like a cisgender person is hindi nagma-match sa kung anong makikita niya sa kung anong representation na nakikita niya sa visual media.
Right.
So pag lumalabas siya sa real life, uh, ang akala niya it's something that you can shed, it's something you can
Right.
remove.
Parang
Wrong
costume lang
expectation,
siya.
costume lang siya, di ba? So they panic and then if they have murderous tendencies, then it's dangerous for the transgender person because she or he can get murdered.
Right.
So yun yung correlation na nakikita na kung bakit it's actually lethal for
Right.
transgender women na
Right.
hindi maging hindi actor na transgender yung dapat mag-portray ng role on film. But
Mm-hmm.
I also agree with Direk na since the status quo is not yet that,
Right.
obviously hindi ganun kadami ang transgender or queer actors na working right now. And so kung hindi man ganun, the thing is that's a reality. But the more important thing is we have to continue and become consistent. Nandyan yung storya, andyan yung gusto magpalabas ng storya, gamitin na natin yung pagkakataon.
True.
Na okay lang, sige, magkaroon tayo ng actor na straight playing a gay role to benefit yung pag-further ng gay media, gay visual media. Makikita sila at makikita yung storya na napapanood ng mga tao. And I guess tama si Direk din. Ang laki ng responsibilidad ng creator. So kung
Right.
kung magka-cast ka man ng straight guy for that role, no? siguraduhin mo nang maintindihan niya kung bakit siya nandun.
True.
At, gawin mo na siyang ally.
Correct.
Na kasi yun naman yung importante eh. Sabi nga nila, hindi naman ang revolusyon ay hindi natatapos sa kung sa 1,000 na tao sa buong mundo. So for example, may 1,000 tao sa buong mundo, 100 doon ay bakla. Ang revolusyon ay hindi makakatalo sa natitirang 900, 'di ba? Kailangan mo ng suporta ng natitirang 900 para magbago yung kung ano mang status quo. So, napakalaking parte ng pagiging, inviting them to become our allies and making them really understand. And if it so happens that they have to act out the part, then so be it. Then so be it.
Siguro ako, yun nga parang dagdag ko lang na parang kung straight man, kung bakit carry yung straight actor to play a gay masculine man, for example. Kasi visually, there's no difference. They have the same gender expression. They have, they're both cis men. It's just that, ang ipina-perform mo lang dun is yung libog ng character sa kapwa niya lalaki. And I think that could be a performance kasi yun yung madalas hanapin talaga kahit kanino, mapa-straight or not. Pag sinabing bigyan mo ako ng libog, ipe-perform mo talaga yun on screen. So, I think yun yung carry. Pero kung ako talaga so far, ang reservation ko is that kung trans woman character, kung hindi nila kaya mag-cast ng trans actress, for example, ang peg ko ay sana yung mga openly gay actors. Kasi at least there's truth to yung kumbaga yung experience kasi ng mga bakla in general dito sa bansa ay parehas, 'di ba? Parang talagang nasa extreme levels of discrimination talaga yung mga trans kasi mas iba yung identity na pine-present nila. So parang for me, we have so much openly gay actors. Hindi naman so much, but we have at least yung mga bankable na kahit yung mga stand-up comedian na naging nagkakaroon ng mga comedy roles sa mga pelikula, I think pwede na rin yun. Mako-convince mo na sila doon kasi may popular appeal kasi masa ang nagko-consume sa kanila. So mga ganon. So kung pinipilit na straight, ibalik mo na lang sa sige, wag na lang natin siya gawing trans. 'Di ba? Kasi it's complicated.
Oh my God.
Tweak na lang ng
ganon. Di wag na lang natin gawing trans, 'di ba?
Totoo. Hindi, istorya mo yan. I mean, di ba, kung yun lang naman yung hinihingi ng storya, yung visual representation, edi mag-cast ka dyan ng drag queen kung wala din namang lalim yung gagawin sa storya. Parang kung puro visual lang naman. And siguro, I think, ako ibabalik ko lang na kasi baka may manood tapos snippets ang yung mapanood dito na, they might say na parang me and Derek are agreeing na straight up na parang we shouldn't be na straight roles can go to straight actors gay roles can go to straight actors. No, we're not saying that outright. There should be a lot more effort that should be seen in trying to cast a gay actor in a gay role, in a bind and in a pinch, because alam naman natin hindi ganun kadaming available or may capability to fulfill a role. Then maybe yes, go ahead, but they must temporarily tanggapin nila na ito ay hiram, and then but then work twice or thrice as hard to make a future that this is not even something that's hard to do.
So kumbaga challenge into for casting agents to hindi pwede yung tipong we tried, wala so dapat may above and beyond effort din kahit papano on their part.
Tsaka itama na yung politika tsaka yung tono. Sana yun na yun. Parang, sige, manghiram tayo ng straight actors. Pero sana itama yung politika, itama natin yung tono para hindi naman double whammy, diba? So parang wrong na nga yung, kumbaga hindi na nga napunta tayo dun sa ideal ng casting. Tapos mali pa yung message, dangerous pa yung politika niya. So, 'di ba parang ano 'yon?
Right.
Diba?
yung isang thing na take away ko from the documentary, yung plug tayo ng disclosure dito, no? Pero it made me realize yung mga coding na hindi ko na-realize na kinocode na pala ako ng media. Like how it basically makes a monster of the trans person over and over. Like those are things na parang hindi kasi siya overt to me, and I think especially when I was younger, hindi siya overt na message na the movie was telling me na pala na trans people are dangerous. I didn't realize that until I saw it in the documentary. Na, oh shit, that's what cinema has been telling me before, right? Well, I just wanted to point that out. Na, and then and I also want to connect it because after the J.K. Rowling, she isn't over yet. Like she is still doubling down on herself for
Cancelled.
some reason. Sabi niya, wait, meron pa. So, kasi the other day, a friend texted me kasi another friend daw asked her na parang, paano naging anti-trans yan? Paano naging transphobic yan? Parang cisgender naman daw yung character who was just dressing up as a woman when he would murder his victim. Di ba parang ganun yung
yeah.
kasi tinanong ako, bakit daw what makes it transphobic? So I had to kindly explain because you're making it seem na I think it tama ba ako na it goes back to this notion of deceit or did I verbalize did I like make sense of it wrong?
Ako sisimplihan ko lang yung argument ko doon.
Yeah.
Na parang it's the same argument of Tito Soto about trans.
Yeah.
'Di ba? Paano kung may mag-dress up lang as a woman tapos mamboso siya sa banyo? That is the danger. You know, that's the danger of that messaging. Na people can actually, weaponize your identity to their parang ma-realize mo na, you know what, it's not trans women hindi trans women ang problema, cis men ang problema. Kasi sila yung nagwe-weaponize ng harmless identity na dapat harmless in the first place, 'di ba? So, yan yung mga dangers kasi nung identity. And ako simple lang din na parang in a man's perspective, I'm looking at, considering the perspective of my mom. I grew up na kapag nakapanood kami ng isang bakla na pinatay, for example, sa MMK or sa Ipaglaban Mo or sa Calvento Files because of lalaki, meron agad general assumption na kaya ikaw mag-iingat ka. Kahit it's a place of concern, gumagalaw kami sa isang lipunan na ang gawain ng isa ay gawain ng lahat.
Yeah.
Pagka may baklang pumatay, may antagonize ang buong community. Galit talaga lahat sa mga bakla. Pero, it doesn't happen kapag may straight na rapist. Okay, wala naman tayong anti-straight sentiments, diba? Hindi naman tayo nag-anti-straight sentiments. So, yun yung mga dangers na, papasok ko ulit dun sa responsibility of content creation. Na you don't just represent your character. You represent a community. Kasi whether you like it or not, there will be people, at marami sila, na ang magiging perception sa character mo ay kung paano nila tinitignan yung kabuuan ng community na yun. Kasi andun pa sila sa wala pa sila masyadong alam. So kung ito pa lang yung mapapanood nila, yan yung pagbabasihan nila ng relativity, ng pagiging relatable, Yun yung pagbabasihan nila ng mga characters na binubuo nila sa isip nila. So yun yung mga kailangang i-consider. Kaya yung mga ganyang bagay, actually, it would be more interesting and transgressive kung actually trans woman yung pumapatay.
Totoo.
Mas commentary siya. Pero yung ginawa kasi ni JK, pinipilit niya yung argument niya that trans women, the whole idea of trans is performative.
Right.
Diba? Parang hindi talaga siya identity. They're not women, they're men. Diba? Yun yung gusto niyang i-assert na kanyang panindigan. Oo, diba? Kaloka si bakla.
She's so obsessed with vaginas for some reason. I don't understand why she is obsessed with that.
Doon tayo against. Ang naisip ko, may nag-uusap kami ni sino ba yung kausap ko sa Twitter kanina? Si Kaki Pangilinan. So, we were talking about what kind of thing J.K. Rowling is trying to do and how this is so destructive. na matagal na siyang alam natin na ano pala siya, exclusionary feminist.
Mhm.
So, parang, okay, may anti-trans sentiment na siya. Fine. Then we discover na ginagamit niya yung standpoint niya na yun, maling opinion, para kumita pa ng pera.
Exactly.
So, at magbenta ng libro. Then my theory is maybe no, since we know of J.K. Rowling as somebody who deeply researches her characters, her stories. Baka nabuo yung idea niya about trans as it's a performative thing. It's not real.
Yeah.
Um, Kasi nag-research siya siguro dun sa character nung sinusulat niyang libro. And like,
Oh, that's
di
right.
ba? So,
Oo nga.
na-theorize ko yun kasi matagal ng trope yung cross-dressing murder.
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Matagal na siyang napapanood. And it's a huge like point of surprise. Napanood
Yeah.
natin to sa um, what's this movie, Silence of the Lambs, yung
Yes.
buong series na yun ni Thomas Harris,
Yeah.
and also Ace Ventura, Pet
Yes.
Detective, na yung villain pala ay parang isang transgender, and you know, parang ang nangyari dun is, dapat lang siyang patayin
Yes.
kasi deceitful siya.
Right.
Or evil siya. Like, yun nga, yung coding na monster ang transgender, no?
Right.
So, siguro naghalo-halo dun sa ganong klaseng pag-aaral ni J.K. Rowling about the character, at doon nabuo yung kanyang unfair and wrong opinion about what being transgender is. It's just so unfortunate na yun pa yung naisip niya. But some people are, just truly hateful,
Right.
cannot find, the love in and understanding and respect and empathy with themselves, and that's why they do it. So,
Mhm.
but then that's the case. You want na we are able to counter this narrative. If J.K. Rowling, one of the biggest authors in the entire world, can do such thing, then we need more and more people to speak out against her, and that I think that's
Yeah.
what I appreciate about the rest of the Harry Potter cast,
Yeah.
who have come out in support of transgender rights,
Right.
and like basically tinrash nila yung opinion ni J.K. Rowling, and they didn't care about it, and supported instead transgender individuals. So yun, I guess yun yung like how I look at it and how that's important.
Right. Okay, we touched on a lot of things, and hopefully, as Derek mentioned kanina, sana hindi tayo nagpe-preach to the choir lang. Hopefully may mga nanonood
Mhm.
who learned a thing or two, something new today. So we kind of touched on it, but what are other things that people can do to actually further trans representation in Philippine media? We kind of touched on it kanina. Opening your purses is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Siguro yung overcoming the lack of LGBTQ actors or openly LGBTQ actors to mas konting effort pa sa paghahanap sa kanila. Ano bang pwedeng gawin natin? Kasi nga, nabanggit mo rin na parang the wrong representation, misrepresentation is physically, can cause physical harm to real
Mm-hmm.
people on the ground. So what can we do? Hindi naman tayo naglalatag ng action plan dito eh. No? Hindi naman
Mhm.
umaasa yung buong industriya siguro sa Rappler Talk na to. Pero,
Ako, yeah, I guess sa point ng what can we do, kami, no, like kung queer LGBT ka, don't be afraid, number one, to maybe, if you're a creator, don't be afraid that your story might not come out, there's an audience for it now. So if I'm talking to somebody who's a creator, go do it. Kung ano yung ginagawa mo, kung ano yung what you've been planning to do, to put out a story you want to write, a film you want to direct, or some creative endeavor that you want that deals with LGBT issues, go do it. Okay? Uh, it's one of the best times to do it right now. And but most importantly, I guess, anong pwedeng gawin? And I'm going to talk to the allies who are in power. No?
Yeah.
I've heard of Mamu when it came out. Ewan ko, correct me if I'm wrong, Direk ha. Pero this Mamu was championed by the panel who decided it could come out in Cinema One.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, championed ng hindi naman LGBT. Alam mo
Mm-hmm.
yon. So, ibig sabihin, the people who have a voice, who have a seat on the table, who are
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily LGBT, can be made to understand why our stories, should go out and be seen. So,
Yeah.
pwede yung, I mean, I'm gonna talk to the allies. If you really want our stories, and if you want to become our accomplices, you know,
Yes.
in making sure that this world is going to be a better place for everyone,
Right.
you know, and to ensure that you have equal rights, etc. And if you're in a position of power or able to make decisions that could highlight and put forward LGBT narrative stories, then go do it. Please choose us and champion us. Uh, kung nasa desisyon mo pala na mag-feature ng ganitong storya, piliin mo yun please. Kasi how many more romance stories about straight people are we gonna watch
Right.
compared to, if there's an amazing story about genderqueer individuals never before seen on screen but written beautifully, put your money and decision into it to make it happen, the straight stories will be there forever. Diba?
Mm-hmm.
But if you can carve us a space to show these stories, please choose us. Please choose the story. Um, and also a message to those na siguro aiming to be in that kind of position, no, na LGBT din. Paboran nyo na yung storya ng LGBT. Again, napakaraming straight stories, and it will happen forever. It will be told forever and ever and ever. But what we want is for LGBT stories to be that same level.
Right.
And it will not start next year, in 2 years, in 10 years, in the future. It will have to, the seeds will have to be planted now
Yeah.
before we can even say na the future is going to be a lot better for LGBTQ children growing up today.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yun.
Ako, I have a message for like the audience, the producers, and the creators. Siguro sa audience, I think ito na rant ko na rin to sa Twitter before, but like we are draining so much of our energy calling out problematic content. You know, andyan na yan. I think ang call ko is instead of calling them out and giving them publicity kasi they earn from it by being problematic. Why don't we just, exert our energy or effort um, publicizing, promoting contents that actually represent us. Contents that actually, tell our story. Kasi maiinggit ka, people are like going viral for being problematic and they get mula for it.
Exactly.
The
Exactly.
reason why producers are keep producing their content
I know.
because regardless, diba, if it's problematic or not, it,
If it makes
kumikita.
money.
Oh,
Yeah.
kumikita kasi pinanood mo rin kaya mo siya kinall out. So parang how I wish we have that same support for actual stories that, represent our community. Kasi wala, sayang yung chance. I mean,
Right.
wala, mapupush na lang yung mga producers to tap problematic people kasi they can get publicity for free.
Yeah.
Right? They're just being wrong by being dumb.
Right.
For For our producers, my call is to tap the right people. If your intention is ganito, sana, tap the right people na lang to do it. Kasi producers are just like financing the film and they want something. Tap the right people so they can package your intention in the right place. Ganon. Parang, at kasi normally ito lang naman idea nila eh. Parang I want a trans film, something something. And then have the right one so that the story would be actually great. Kasi, yung intention, okay naman eh. Gusto lang nilang gumawa ng kunyari trans film na ganito yung kwento. Pero napakadami pang pwedeng magawa ng kwento. So you just have to tap the right people. No? If it's a gay story or a trans story, give it to queer directors, queer writers. I think yun yung key. Not just being queer ha, they have to be, at least sana meron silang ground experience at least. They know how to speak for the community, not just to speak as a queer person. Kasi magkaiba yun, di ba? They have to know how to speak for the community. Kasi personal, hindi mo na maihiwala yung personal is political or yung personal politics niya sa community na nire-represent niya. Kasi the film is actually packaged as a representation of everybody. So, kailangan siyang maayos. And then for creators, i-assess nyo maigi sa sarili nyo yung motivation nyo of writing stories, Kailangan na sa tamang lugar yung puso. Kasi kung yung intention lang is that, parang ang aesthetic ng isang trans woman. Diba? Parang, the idea of exoticizing a trans body. Parang magandang gawing trans to si kasi parang androgynous siya. Or parang why not, gumawa tayo ng trans film na cis woman ang gaganap na trans woman. Diba? Parang kakaiba. Diba? These things are, ang laki ng pinagkakaiba niya eh. Kailangan yung motivation mo of writing and doing something ay tama. Diba? Kailangan may pinaghuhugutan ka kasi hindi ka ililigaw nun. Hindi ka ililigaw ng puso. Yun. So yun ang aking ako yun ang aking message sa na sana mangyari.
Napakaganda.
Ayun.
Thank you so much. Okay, so if our viewers want to read up more, be educated more, do you have any resources, I guess, na they can refer to if they want to go beyond our discussion today?
Well, unang-una na yung lagi nating pinopromote. Mapanood sana nila yung Disclosure. It's a documentary that's on Netflix, and it talks about the US experience of representation, transgender representation in US media. But my comment nga dun sa when I first watched it is the experience is parallel. May napakaraming since we are so informed with American culture anyway, mas napakarami mong makikita na nakikita mo din at na-experience mo din dito sa local media. More resources, my God, please watch available movies online that deal with transgender and gay narratives. Mamu is still out, tama ba, Direk?
Yes, until September 30.
YouTube. Until September 30. So please watch Mamu. Share ko lang very quickly, no? So I watched Mamu, this is for the second time I'm able to watch Mamu dung sa nasa YouTube, no? And I watched it with my manicurista who is trans. So, nakakaloka na napapanood niya yung sarili niya dun sa movie. Kasi may setting dun sa movie yung best friend ni Mamu na nagtatrabaho, meron siyang parlor. So, imagine that effect. I was able to share watching the movie online with my own manicurista who is a transgender woman. So parang it was a fantastic feeling to be able to share that with somebody na hindi siya usually naaabot nung ganong film. And I encouraged her to actually share it to people na she knows na mas mapanood pa nila on YouTube. So there are the way isang napakalaking effect nitong pandemic at itong lockdown, no? So, nag-change ang distribution models ng how we consume visual media. dati napakahirap maglabas ng pelikulang ganyan. For sure, napakahirap maglabas ng BL sa mainstream.
Probably.
Imagine
Correct.
ABS-CBN, prime time
Probably.
slot,
Prob.
BL.
Yeah.
It's like it will blow my mind.
Right.
If it happens. But the distribution model has changed like drastically during this era, and that's to the benefit of uh, the creative workers, na at least nakakagawa sila ng something na may interest yung tao at pagkakakitaan at magkakaroon sila ng pera, and bonus na, oh my god, LGBT content. So gawin na lang nating tama. At tama nga si Direk na may mas puso. So, yun, resources, Disclosure, watch it. Local films that deal about LGBT stories. Ang pagdadalaga ni Maximo Oliveros is actually also in YouTube. Tama ba? I think I saw it
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I believe so.
Yeah.
yeah, it's there. So, it's one of the first films I've ever watched that, I completely related to the character. Na nasabi ko, oh my God, ganyan ako nung bata ako. Shit. Ako si Maxi. Ganun. And it was written, and it was such a fantastic intro to the power of representation in
True.
visual media ng buhay mo. So, if you haven't watched that, that's a seminal work of Philippine LGBT representation in media. And many others. Marami pang books, marami pang resources, may maraming organizations tayo na pwede nating kausapin about it. Ako personally, if you want to talk to me online about your experiences as LGBT, kung anong gusto mong malaman pa, Soji, just tell me, I'm open. You can find me there.
Your
Yun lang.
handle?
Thais, Thysz, that's my name. I'm the only Thais probably in the Philippines. So, madali lang akong
Madaling
hanapin.
hanapin. Direct?
Yeah. Ako, wait lang, mag-react lang ako dun sa Manicurista. Kasi,
Ah.
when Mamu was unfortunately pirated online, noon pa, middle of pandemic, siguro yung nakita kong silver lining doon ay, yun nga, yung umabot siya sa laylayan. Because I received so many messages like, mga empleyado ng mga fast food, ng parang meron pang isang bit character na parang pumunta siya sa Lamay tapos tinawag-tawag siya in the character name. Parang mga bakla sa Lamay naman na parang na-recognize siya from that film, and I think yun yung pinaka masarap na pakiramdam that na-reach ko yung mga audience na gusto kong i-reach, kasi nung ginawa ko naman yung Mamu, yung mga baklang kali, mga baklang kanal, mga baklang probinsya, yan talaga yung gusto kong marinig, kasi I think sila yung for the longest time naging tampulan ng tukso, sila yung parang minamaliit kasi mga mahihirap sila, ganyan. And sobrang masarap sa pakiramdam na nakita nila yung mga sarili nila dun sa kwento, kasi doon ko nasabi sa sarili ko na I should continue making such stories, kasi sila naman yung gusto kong maka-appreciate talaga nung pelikula, and I get to speak with them through my film, through that language na inoffer ko. Tapos ayun, kung resources wise, I think sobrang dami naman tayong pwedeng I think mga likha ni J. Neil Garcia, yung Adladlad anthology niya, would be a great primer, not just in media representation, but in representation in general in literature, yung experiences, kasi kasi siyang history book for me. I mean, yun yung mga RRL ko nung college eh. So, maganda yung mga libro na gawa ni Sir Neil Garcia. Tapos, kung may mga questions din kayo and to know more about my upcoming content, and sana supportahan nyo, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at I am Roda Frog. Ayan. Kasi may upcoming another ako na trend natin, and we shot it during the pandemic, and shoot kami sa Pampanga. This time naman, it's gonna be EJ Halorina, si Bona, kasi nanghingi sila ng part 2, just ko. Sabi ko nga, papunin nyo ng million views to. But it's not part 2. It's a different universe. It's a different narrative, but it stars EJ Halorina and Albi Casino. So dito kung si Bona
Oh,
doon, short hair pa, dito dalaga na siya.
oh my
Dalaga na siya
God.
dito.
Okay.
And this is romance. This is a romance. And this is what I want to Actually, kaya may Bona narrative sa Mamu. It's because yun na yung audition film ko, supposedly, that I want to actually go through rom-com and romance eventually. So, eto na yun. Concentrated sa kanya. It also stars si Jervy Lee or si Khaled Karen.
Ah.
Oh,
So
okay.
I got the chance to actually introduce another trans star, a trans woman actress in this film. Ito yung hindi naman niya film debut, but like this is a role na
Mm.
siya na si Jervy Lee and not Khaled Karen. So very exciting din na makita nyo kung ano yung totoong kayang ibigay ng isang trans actress. Yon.
Okay.
I'm so
Ibubok ko na yung
excited.
Magubok na ako ng Rappler
Grabe.
Talk for that kung closer na to
Yes.
release. Because I want to talk about that in detail, more detail
Yeah.
next time. Thank you so much
Ayun.
for the time that you gave me. I certainly learned a lot, and I think yun nga, parang actually hindi ko to nasabi off air, pero parang I sometimes feel naiilang ako to hold discussions on LGBTQ plus issues, especially because I'm a
Aha.
cisgender straight woman. Like there's also apprehension sometimes, I guess, and I might be asking the wrong questions, but yung consuelo de bobo ko na lang, at least I'm asking questions and at least I'm trying to understand an
Yeah.
experience that I could never imagine because of my privilege. So, thank you so much for your time. After this, kukulitin ko sila. I'll ask them for more links if they have any websites or other resources that they want to share you, and we'll link that in the article that will come with this interview video. So, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for spending this evening. We're recording this in the evening. This evening with me, and for Rappler. So, this has been Beko Pin. I hope that you learned a lot from this discussion. Kung kulang pa, we will give you all the resources that you want. You've been watching Rappler, and I hope you learned a lot from today. Thank you for watching. Bye.